I'm in the middle of work right now.
Please.
Working from home sounds great, doesn't it? You can stay in your personally designed office and really focus on your work. No commutes, no bosses watching over your shoulders, and you can do it in your pajamas. Though it may sound like a great work solution, there's a lot to think about when it comes to teleworking. So today, I'm here to talk to you about the benefits and detriments of teleworking compared to a traditional on-site office environment. Teleworking is the common term used to describe work done from home instead of in a traditional office. The idea of working remotely is not a new one. It has actually been around as early as the 1970s when computer programmers would take some of their work home with them. By 1972, there was already talk of the potential benefits of teleworking, such as the decrease in gasoline usage. In 1979, a Washington Post article discussed the benefits of teleworking and suggested the government should do some research into the feasibility of it. And by 1981, Businessweek found several companies that had already had employees working in their home offices. With the onset of the internet becoming more accessible to the public, teleworking became even more manageable. Now, workers could connect through special network tunnels to access resources on company servers. Work could be taken home by simply hopping on the internet. However, even with the ease of access, many employers were still hesitant to allow teleworking. There were concerns of productivity, lack of oversight, and general concern about the effective utilization of their employees. Would their quality of work suffer? With employees not physically co-located, would collaboration and innovation become more complicated? How would they know if employees were putting in their 8 hours a day? A lot of those concerns got tossed out the window, though, in the beginning of 2020. A worldwide pandemic struck and many of us went into lockdown isolation. For the good of public health, we had to stay home. But work still had to get done, right? Many organizations rushed to set up policies and procedures to facilitate working from home. A year and a half later, we're still teleworking. My own office doesn't want their people coming in more than 2 or 3 days a week, and they have been a lot less concerned about those people who are content with and able to work from home all the time. But that's just a snapshot of what teleworking in the United States looks like right now. What is happening in other countries? In other parts of the world, such as Spain and Australia, we can get a picture of what teleworking is like on a more global level. In Spain, prior to the pandemic, only about 5% regularly teleworked, compared to a larger 33% in Australia. Now, Spain is seeing that raised to around 37%, and Australia is up to somewhere between 50 and 88%, depending on the report. America fell between the two foreign countries with approximately 20% working from home before the pandemic and around 71% afterwards. Those numbers show what is clear. People are working from home more often now than ever before. But is that a good thing? Well, we're still trying to determine that. There are a lot of factors to consider. At the beginning of the lockdown, I was teleworking 8 hours a day from one computer. At the end, I'd get up and spend time doing chores around the house or watching television with my family or spending time online with friends. There's a lot of screen time in there, and that can be both good and bad. On the one hand, I found a way to stay connected and was able to keep from going too stir crazy. But on the other hand, I associated human connection with a screen of some sort. With the lockdown, there was a transition period as we became more familiar with and more accepting of teleworking. For some, they found that their schedule did not have to be as rigid. While some jobs, such as those working a specific shift in a call center that was now virtual, required a fixed time, others became less focused about when you were available in lieu of work milestones being completed. With the shift from attentiveness to productivity, workers were able to shift their schedule to a time that was more convenient for them. Night owls would stay up late, and early risers would get online earlier in the morning. The benefits of this sort of arrangement are immediately apparent. Your schedule becomes yours. You were home all day, and this meant you had more connection with your family. Parents were helping kids in virtual school. There was no need to make that long commute anymore. People could just roll out of bed and over to their computer desk for that early morning meeting. But with those benefits, there was also drawbacks. If a worker went into the office at 9 a.m., they knew they were leaving the office at 5 p.m. They can then plan their day around that schedule, and they associate being in the office to working. However, when teleworking, the fluidity of that schedule means that you can disappear for an hour to get your kid to the doctor's appointment, and you can make up that hour later on. But without the clear delineation, you might get lost in your project and end up working for an extra 2 hours instead. On a smaller scale, what if you were perpetually responding to emails throughout the night? Those little 5-minute emails here and there can add up real quick. People were becoming overworked and they weren't taking vacations because there was nowhere to go. But what about when home life becomes too demanding? Parents that would normally send their children to daycare were now keeping them home and still trying to telework. This meant that work quality and commitment would often take a step back in favor of helping your kids in their virtual classrooms. Another drawback to consider of teleworking is the social interaction. If you are anything like me, the social interaction at the office is recharging, it's refreshing. When at home, stuck behind a computer screen, a greater sense of isolation and loneliness can develop. People are not out and engaging and finding entertainment and companionship with their colleagues and friends. This can also make your work feel more tedious and stale. No water cooler talk means that those reports cannot be as easily put off for just another 5 minutes. Of course, we are still going to meetings through video teleconferences where we all gather around our Microsoft Teams or Zoom and start off with discussing who's having microphone issues, can you hear me, and why someone has a cat head filter on. These teleconferences do help to engage with colleagues, but they present their own set of new circumstances. The positive is that meetings are more efficient and people tend to be less distracted. Also, it takes a little bit of coordination to put a teleconference together, which means that some of those random meetings that could have been an email just don't happen. Less meetings can mean more time for productive work. But video conferences do have their own drawbacks. A new phenomena has been noticed and is being called video conference fatigue. Essentially, this is a case where even a simple video conference can lead to a sense of exhaustion. Where the workday can lead to its own general sense of exhaustion, video conference fatigue is linked more specifically to the actual video conference, the actual event. The specifics of the fatigue are still being researched. Some think that leaving your webcam on during a meeting would lead to a greater sense of fatigue because you have to focus and you have to show more concentration. But with it being off, a worker may experience a greater sense of disconnection. Another concern with teleworking is that it does not affect all workers equally. While traditional office jobs can be done remotely, physically intensive ones cannot. This can also lead to a greater divide between traditional white-collar and blue-collar employee classes. One gets to stay home while the other has to go into the worksite each day. With all of these factors to consider for the employee, their companies are also seeing a new culture grow that they have to adapt to. Employees see that telework is out there and that it can be successful, and for some, that is the only way they want to work. Why go into the office if you can stay at home? Well, not every employer has signed on with the idea yet. Some still think that being in the office is the most productive way to go. But they're now starting to see problems where new talent is asking what telework options are available. And if they don't like what they hear, they pass on the opportunity in favor of a company that does provide telework options. Beyond the effects of telecommuting has on the worker and on the employer, there's also the environmental side to consider. Initially, most would assume that more teleworking means less commuting, which means less environmental damage, right? Well, that may be true for workers that have particularly long commutes, really anything over 30 or 40 minutes, but a lot of office buildings are designed to be more energy efficient than your average home. And a home that is less energy efficient will demand more power, which can increase environmental damage overall long term. As we consider all the positives and negatives of teleworking, we begin to look to the future. One thing is clear, teleworking isn't going to disappear, it's not going away. It's only going to expand. As previously mentioned, employers are already starting to see an increase in potential hires seeking telework options, and this will be a problem for management teams that do not accommodate this changing work environment. In order to stay competitive, they will have to look toward a more accommodating approach to teleworking. Some of the ways to do that is with hybrid schedules where workers split their time between home and office, adding in hot desk solutions where the employees are in the office that day, they sit any desk available rather than taking up an assigned desk that will be empty half the time. Employers can minimize the necessary office space needed for their team and therefore have more energy efficient offices and be better for the environment in the long run. In looking at these benefits and detriments, it is important to understand that there's no simple answer. Teleworking can have positive effects on employee happiness, productivity, and the environment, but it can also have negative effects in those same areas. What we started to learn in the past year and a half is how to make teleworking better. Digital infrastructures are being enhanced, new policies being written, and new ideas coming forward. Teleworking represents the next evolution of the work environment. These changes will continue to come at us, and we will continue to adapt and grow and work hard, like we always do. Thank you. My name is Jeff Cawley, and this has been a presentation for BEHS 103, Technology in Contemporary Society.